What I got, you can't buy. It resides between my eyes. Walked through the fire, came out better on the other side. See, life's like a beach if you find the sand. And right now, I'm feeling like 100 grand.
You are listening to Inspired Insider with your host, Dr. Jeremy Wise.
Dr. Jeremy Weiss here, founder of InspiredInsider.com, where I talk with inspirational entrepreneurs and leaders. Today is no different. I have Justin Krane. You can check him out at KraneFinancialSolutions.com and IntentionMoney.com. Justin, before I formally introduce you, I always like to point out other guests of the podcast I should mention. And, you know, Justin is one of those people that's like just an amazing human being, business person. And so, you know, I have done a top giver series, like some of just givers, like they just in your world and universe, they just want to help. And Justin's one of those people. Past episodes include Brian Kurtz, David Gonzalez, Ian Garlic, Kevin Thompson, just some of the givers I know out there. So thank you. Check out those episodes, and how they think about relationships, how they think about the world is always interesting for people and myself. And this episode is brought to you by Rise 25. At Rise 25, we help businesses give to and connect to their Dream 100 relationships. And how do we do that? We actually help you run your podcast. We are an easy button for a company to launch and run your podcast. We do strategy, the accountability, and the full execution for your podcast. And I've known Justin for a while, and you know, Justin, you know this, the number one thing in my life is relationships. I'm always looking at ways to give to my best relationships. And I've found no better way to do that over the past decade to profile the people and companies I most admire and share with the world what they're working on and what they're about. So if you've thought about podcasting, you should. If you have questions, go to rise25.com. I'm actually shocked of how long it's taken me to get Justin on the podcast. It's not by my lack of trying, but I'm excited to introduce today's guest, Justin Krane. He's a certified financial planner and founder of Krane Financial Solutions. And Justin, I would say you take a very holistic approach to financial planning, and you advise clients on how to kind of unite their business and personal money with their lives. And you work with clients to create a purpose-driven financial plan. And you say it, and we'll have you break it down a little bit more about aiming for a return on life, right? And he, manages his clients' investment portfolios for long-term goals and retirement. Justin, thanks for joining me.
Jeremy, thank you. I've known Jeremy, everybody listening, since I was in like 8th grade. He is the best. He's so cool. He's smart. He's a giver, and he's just the best. And for those of you on the fence and not knowing whether you need to work with Jeremy or not, I've worked with him. The guy's amazing. And his junior partner, John Corcoran, is even better.
Junior partner. I'll have to give you a 20 after this, so I appreciate that. What does it mean when I say return on life? Like, what does that mean?
I think it's making financial decisions that are congruent with your values and make you feel like you're not just investing money to get like ROI, like a return on investment, but like if it really means a lot to take the entire family on a vacation, like your parents, your kids, your grandkids, whatever, all in one, and you're going to do it and you've saved up for it, then that's an intentional decision that you've made, which is going to give you happiness, satisfaction, meaning, and purpose. So at the end of the day, when we're no longer here, we can't take all the possessions, but we can take our experiences and memories with us. And the people that are still alive are going to benefit from that. And that's our legacy. I mean, that's just an example. But it's about meaning. It's about purpose. It's about just using money that aligns with your values when you feel good about it.
I'd love to hear, because I like getting ideas. You hear a lot about people's their goals, right? That return on life goal. And that would be one. Someone wants to take their entire family to Hawaii or something. What are some other interesting goals that maybe they gave you ideas of what you want to do with your family?
Well, I never thought I'd spend like a lot of money on a vacation. And I did, like pre-COVID. And I went to Israel, London, and Italy in 2 different trips. And the trips were broken down because my dad passed away like I think a year earlier, and I had to just set up the trips differently. And going into the trips, I was like, oh my God, I'm spending all this money. Like, what am I doing? Like, this is ridiculous. crazy. And I did it anyways. And it felt weird and uncomfortable to do it. But then I look back during COVID, I'm like, thank God I did that. Thank God I did something like that, because I've had nothing going on for 2 years during COVID. So looking back, it was a great decision. But going into it, I was freaking out. Like goosebumps. Like it was weird.
Are there any other interesting goals people have? Maybe, I don't know, whether it's an experience that they wanted or something they've always strived to do in their, maybe they, didn't wait for retirement.
Yeah. Well, Jeremy, you live in Chicago, right? What is the average? What's the average low during the winter there?
Well, it's funny. You should never live in a place where it says, here's the temperature, it's 10 degrees, feels like -20,
Yeah.
right? If you are in a place that says feels like, and it's much lower, it's a sad day.
Yeah. The Windy City.
It
So
get very cold.
yeah, like I had some
I mean,
clients.
last week, right now, wherever people are listening, but like we're in March, mid-March, it was like 16 degrees at one point, and I was thinking, why do I live here?
Feels like.
Yeah, feels like 0. Should be 50.
Like, so I had these clients that lived in Chicago, and they were like, we got to get out of here. Like, we got to get out. And
I say that every day.
they're like, what are we doing here? They're like, we need to go. So they told me they're big into skiing, and they're like, we got to go. We're going to go to, like, I don't know, Breckenridge or Steamboat or whatever. So we came up with a plan for them to retire in Steamboat. But what they did is they speeded up their process. So instead of, let's say, retiring at 65, they would move there at age 58 and then work there remote and then ease into their retirement. So it was an example of something that they could work towards. And, it's hard to cold turkey retire. I actually write a lot about, like, financial independence and cold turkey retiring. But if you can retire earlier and work part-time, it eases that transition, especially financially. So we came up with this plan of building a house in Steamboat, and now they're not freezing. It's 35 in Steamboat, and it feels like 35.
So what do you write about and talk about when you talk about cold turkey retiring?
That's like, a lot of people are like, okay, at age 63, I'm done. Like, I don't want to work anymore. And really what people mean by that is I want to have the option to not work anymore. Because a lot of people don't just stop immediately and, like, sail off into the sunset and play golf every day. Usually they're doing something a few times a week. They can make money doing it. But a lot of us just want to know that, like, okay, when I have 10 million or 4 million or whatever it is, I'm done. But it's some weird, arbitrary, funky number that has no relevance on anything.
What are some mistakes people make? I mean, sometimes people are, a lot of times people are asking you advice around finances. What are mistakes people make around when they're dealing with money?
I think we all want everything right now. Like, we want it in 5 seconds. And, one of the biggest things with money is compounding of interest. So when you invest, your money grows and it compounds, but it really, really grows in years 20 and 30, not from years 1 to 10. I mean, I think Warren, this quote is right, but, like, Warren Buffett made, like, a ton of his wealth after age 65. It wasn't until the money compounded and got to some level, and then it really started going. So my kids are like, okay, like, how they make a post on Instagram, how many likes do I have within 10 seconds? It's like, what's up with that? You know that scene in SNL? What's up with that? What's up with that? What's up with that? I mean, really? So, like, compounding of interest takes time, people. Gaining wealth takes time. You can get some results quickly. And I know you deal with a lot of players that, like, make $4 billion in 12 seconds, but really gaining wealth, it really just takes time and working it. And let me ask you a question. I've never seen you in a white shirt before. Is this your first white shirt?
It is my first white shirt. Exactly.
Okay. Everyone listening, Jeremy has the best white shirts. I think I need to get one.
I like yours. They're more your style.
Thank you. Okay, where were we?
So instant gratification.
Yes.
Right. So that's a mistake people make. They instantly want that, and they, it takes time for it to grow and compound.
Mhm.
What's another? And I don't know if you're into comedy, I can't remember, but Ronnie Chang has a great bit about this, about
Yeah.
Amazon and Amazon Prime. So for people
What
who
does he
like
say?
comedy, check that out. I'm not going to butcher it, so I would just say go watch it. But it's about Amazon Now, not Amazon Prime, but Amazon Now, where you push a button and then it just shows up in your hand. And he's a whole bit around it. So check it out. I think it's on Netflix. What else do mistakes people make when they're dealing or thinking about money?
I think for business owners, when they're approaching seven figures, it's dealing with people. The compensation, they haven't quite figured out what to pay people. Um, the cash flow off of payroll, meaning you're paying people, is there an ROI in it? Is it freeing up your time? What should their comp structure be? And a lot of times people work for business owners and entrepreneurs thinking they're going to make gobs of money right away, and they don't even have a clear growth pattern on what they want. So what I think is best is when you're hiring people, not only to look at the money aspect of it, but to get clear on the growth path that an employee wants to take. Notice I say employee, because actually a lot of mistakes I see, I'm just gonna call it this way. I guarantee you that 42 gazillion people are going to disagree with me, but everyone's hiring VAs and everyone's doing VAs who live in Guam, Philippines, Peru, and South Indonesia. But there's nothing wrong with hiring employees. Literally, they work for you all the time and they're part of the team, and they can even be remote, but I think employees are important because they're dedicated people that work for you and that are part of your deal. So when you're hiring an employee, of course there's an employment package with benefits and 401k and comp and bonus and all that, but what about the growth avenue and the growth path for that person? If they don't feel like they're going to achieve growth, they're going to bail at some point in time. And then the mistake that you make is you invested time and energy and money in this person, and then they're gonzo, and now it's you wearing 75 hats instead of 74 hats. I wear about 17 hats. I'm down from 20.
Can you talk about that growth plan, or maybe an example of, because it's great advice, and I know, a lot of people think about this. What would be an example of someone who and how they structured a growth plan?
Well, I look at the Dan Sullivan question, the R factor question. If you look out 1 year, what has to have happened in your life personally and professionally to make you feel like you achieve progress? And some of those answers could be money, but then from there, you can go way more into life, and you can just, tell me more, expand, blah, blah, blah. And then you're going to get the real answers. And then if you can incorporate um some of the, I don't know, the goals or the objectives that person can do into their life working for you, it just aligns them.
So their objectives of in their life, what would be an example? Like they want to go on a trip, or what are we talking?
Um, okay, so I just hired someone, and one of the examples she said was that she didn't feel like she was part of the team, and then she didn't get to interact with the clients, customers, and patients that she was working with. So now on the calls that I have, she's on literally at the beginning, like I'm not even putting her in the shallow end. She did like a cannonball into the deep end of the pool. She's on every call talking with the clients, and I'm working with her and watching over her, but she's immediately feels like she's connected to the other clients and that she's part of the team and that she's communicating with them.
Yeah. So the past position, finding out what the person wanted that they didn't have. In this
Yeah.
case, it was
Yeah.
interaction with clients and working to fulfill some of those objectives, which has nothing to do with financial.
Nothing. And then at the end of like 3 weeks, I asked her, like, I gave her this worksheet to fill out about her progress. And I gave it to her, and like, you talk about a deer in the headlights look, she had no idea what this was about. And I asked her to fill it out. She came back with like one box out of 30 filled out. I'm like, no, you got to really fill it out. I have a side question for the peanut gallery here. everyone listening, there's a Rise 25 Rise Up Together, like full up standing poster of Rise 25. And if you're not working with them, you really need to talk to them because they're amazing. I'm convinced that John Corcoran is hiding behind the Rise 25 poster. Is he there?
Yeah, he's right there.
Oh, there he is. He's probably with his 17 kids on some backpacking trip in southern Utah.
4 probably does feel like 17 kids.
Yes.
But
I'm curious, like what you see, like when you work with your employees or VAs, what do you do to try to get them to feel like they're growing?
yeah. Well, that's what I'm asking you because I want to learn. But I mean, we one of our core values is always learning, right? And so we do have things that we do with the team, like have a book club where we're all going over and up leveling skills. And you mentioned and just feeling like a team because all of us are remote, doing daily stand-ups so that we aren't feeling like we're working in isolation. And so feeling like you're part of the team. I know your staff is in your office, so it's a little bit different, but I know a lot of people running virtual teams. So we do daily stand-ups with different departments so that they can help each other, right? And just as if they're in the office together or having a meeting or walking down the hall, but you feel like you have more of a cohesive team that you're working together because you have these daily stand-ups. And so, I mean, those are a few, but it's a constant, it's a work in progress, right? We don't have it all figured out. It's constantly figuring out how we can help, how we can serve the people that we work with to up-level their skills, to be challenged, to feel like they're contributing to a bigger mission than just the piece of work. And so some of it's just showing, here's the whole thing that we're creating. I know like you're responsible for this piece, but showing everything so that people can see the big picture and the vision of what we're doing, right? Because for us, it's not about just podcasting. It's creating amazing relationships, right? And seeing that this piece that you do helps create an amazing relationship. So that's some of the stuff, but it's always a work in progress. You know what I mean? I ask you that question. I ask questions that I'm curious about that I want to know because we need to get better at those things. So that's why I ask you. And the other thing is, but I like what you said about looking at what people did previously and maybe what didn't fulfill them and what they were looking for and what was a void, because that is helpful and it can run the gamut of things that they wanted, right?
Sure.
Maybe you should have your own podcast because you ask good questions, but and you do. But I looked at it the other day. You need to maybe this episode will go on that podcast.
Exactly.
Money, you got this.
I gotta get going on it more.
And
but, hey, at least I have one. A lot of people need one and haven't done one. So I actually have 5 in the hopper, but we got to get them up, and they should be up by Friday. So it's Friday somewhere.
Exactly. You rattle off a bunch of things. I want to unpack it because it's you think about these financial pieces on a different level, at least than me. And you said cash flow, thinking of cash flow off of payroll, right?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Can you unpack that for a second, what you're looking at? Because I was talking to someone the other day and they're like, well, I know I need to hire, but can I afford to hire? It's all that talk in their brain, right? So someone's like, listen, we need to hire, but can I afford this person? Or what type of person can I afford?
Yeah. Okay. So this is like, I'm going to go paint by numbers, like literally, because I know when I don't know something, I ask someone like, okay, tell me like what's step 1 and like what's step 2? Like I'm so concrete about this. So step 1 is you need someone to tell you how much cash your business creates each month. So that's the statement of cash flows. That's the nerdy way of saying it. But like every month, how much cash does your business generate? So what does that mean? Like, how do you calculate that? So I'm going to go very, very simple. You just take the beginning balance of your business bank account for the month, and then you do the ending balance. And then that difference is the cash that your business generated. So there's a lot of things that can affect that. Profits. You can take money out of your business. You can take loans and money can go into the business. You can pay back a loan and money leaves. There's all of that. But somehow you need a baseline of like how much cash each month your business generates. And then from there, you can determine whether you can afford to hire someone. That's it. Step 2 is how much does that person cost? Like, let's say your business generates 10 grand. Like that's the net change. January 1st, you've got 40. January 31st, you've got 50. So your business generates an extra $10,000, right? Now, if you're going to hire someone that costs $10,000, you can afford it. This is hypothetical. You can afford it as long as there's nothing else in there that isn't going to affect the next month. So it's how much cash does your business generate? And everyone's about profits. What's your P&L and all that? But that's all great. But that's like accounting mumbo jumbo stuff. Like I'm talking cash. I think you have a couple of bills lying behind that big poster in the corner that you've got lots of cash stacked up.
I don't think so. So let's say you have 10,000, right?
Yep.
And like, Justin, what I need to hire this account manager. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm very conservative.
Yep.
How would you think about despite of what like the market rate is or whatever it is,
Yeah.
how would you think about the offer and how much of that cash should you keep?
Yeah. So this gets into like an emergency account. Like, do you have an emergency account for your business? Let's say, I like to have 3 months. That's ideal. 1 or 2 if your business is very, very steady. Is the account manager responsible for sales at all? Handling anything about the growth of the business? Or are they just like an admin that's just like dealing with like paperwork and scheduling and forms and all that stuff?
Yeah. So let's say, it's half and half.
Yeah. So then maybe go with, okay. So I'm literally just pulling this out of my tuchus because it just depends, but I would say 50 to 70% would be fixed and 50 to 30 or 30 to 50 would be on the come, tied to sales, not profits. But, let's say you could, if you got the 10 grand, then you could pay them 5 to 7 and then give them 2 to 5 in a bonus tied to sales. And here's another thing. I work with lots of these clients. Most of them are 7-figure business owners. They like, even if you're a 6-figure business owner, they like, you still think about this. And I see them these people getting in the weeds. I'm like a detailed numbers person. And I hear my clients bring this up and I'm like, this is way too this is way too complex. It's one of these. Our average sales are $100,000, but if we bring in 120, I'm going to give them 40%. But if we bring them 160, I'm going to give them 70%. And the next thing they know, for every month, they're tracking sales on some percentage. And they're spending like 2 hours on this sales structure that is just freakazoid. I'm just with one number. Like if they do over 100, give them 30% or whatever the number is. And I know some director. Yeah, some director of finance from Harvard, Wharton, MBA, blah, 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 is going to give you all these nuances of increasing percentages and CFO strategy and all this. I'm like, we got to keep it simple. We got to go with one number and we'll reassess in 6 months. You can put, hey, we're going to try this out for 3 or 6 months. Go from there.
Do you get a lot of people asking you from a sales perspective, how to create bonus structures?
Sometimes, and we just kind of work through one, but a lot of times people forget that, being that I'm a financial advisor, people forget that if they're hiring employees, you've got workers' comp insurance that goes up. You've got, if they're on some sort of health plan, you've got to pay for that. But the biggie is if you have like a defined benefit plan or a 401k, you've got to put in money for those employees. And if you're doing a profit sharing, they might be getting a lot more money than, or they might be entitled to it than you think. So if you're like all in, you're like, okay, I'm going to bring in this person all in. I want it to cost 80 grand. And you're thinking, all right, I'm going to pay them 65 in a salary. The payroll taxes could be 10 to 15. Then all of a sudden you get hit with the profit sharing number of like 25. And you're like, oh my God, I just gave them a bonus of 20. That was the money that I was going to give them as the bonus. And now I give them another 20 on some profit sharing. Like, what's that? What's up with that? What's up with that?
Sometimes you come in and you have done, I don't know if you currently do, fractional CFO work, right?
Yes. Yes.
And you have to come in and diagnose what's going on. And there was one, I don't know, probably more than one, but one in particular I'm thinking of, which was a marketing agency. So I'd love to hear, they hand you this chest and they're like, Justin, what's going on here? What do we do? What did you do in that situation?
Sure.
What did you find? What do you look at?
Yeah. Let me just give you and everyone a little context on this fractional CFO thing. I'm a CFP. Like, I didn't go to business school. I'm not some CFO of some like Uber tech startup, blah, blah, like none of that. I'm a CFP. And I started asking my clients, what does your business need to do in sales and profits so that you can save $50,000 for retirement? Or like, how much do you have to do in sales if you want to pay down your mortgage in 8 years? Like personal finance stuff. And they're like, I don't know. So I'm like, well, okay, well, let's look at the business money. Like, what's the deal? Like, what are your sales? What are your cash generating and all of that? So that's how I got into the CFO thing. I read a bunch of books. I taught it to myself, and I still learn from people that are way better and smarter than me, but I know enough to create some damage and some drama. And that's the preface to this question. So this question is an agency question where this person does marketing and they have staff, and the staff has to fulfill these projects that the owner does. The owner gets a job, he has to deliver it, and he hires staff to do it. Designers, editors, marketing people, and all of that. So there's always this correlation or connection between labor and your sales. And for that kind of business owner's mind, when you're running an agency or a consulting practice or whatever, it's always like, well, what are my sales? And do I have too many people for the job? Do I have too little people for the job? So you have to get some metric on that. So there's metrics for that. And well, those are called labor efficiency ratios. Now, by the way, for everyone listening, did I create that? No, I literally Googled it. It's just your labor against your gross profit. And I know that's a little technical for some people, but I literally Googled it and I taught it to myself when I was in 4th grade. I mean, it's just like that. So the big question for this one client
is, sound smart when you say that, though.
Yeah. I'm currently in 7th grade and I just had my bar mitzvah this morning.
Labor efficiency ratios.
So the bottom line is like, if you're an entrepreneur and you got this job, what's the right amount of staff? And are you overstaffed or understaffed? And then of course, when you have staff, it's a fixed cost. It's not variable. You got to pay it every month. So that's a big question that I think a lot of business owners need to think through is should they work lean? Do they got to hire more for the next job? How do they conserve cash? By the way, I don't have an answer for that. Like, it's not like black and white, but it is very important to compare, in this example, the staff and the cost of that labor against the projects, against the cash that you have. Here's one more. If you're a marketing agency and you only get 2 jobs a year and you're working with, let's say, only Google or Microsoft, you got to be really dialed in because that's 2 clients. But if you're an agency and you deal with 4,000 clients, you can pivot and kind of move around. But if it's only 2, like, you got to be real dialed in.
So when you say dialed in, what should people be looking at?
You cannot get overextended. You got to look at what your average labor is. And you got to look back like a year, 2 and 3 years and be like, all right, my business did 1 million in sales and I spent 200 grand on labor. So 20%. I'm making it up. And now you think, all right, if you bring in Google and Microsoft and and you do 2 million, well, then does your labor need to be 20% of that 400,000? Then literally you just pull out an org chart and you're like, I got 3 people here, I got 2 people there. You write their names and their salary, and then you'll know if you can pull it off. And then if you don't, bring in your number 2 in your business and be like, hey, this is kind of what I'm thinking. Do you think we can pull this off with these 20 people? And go from there. It's more iterating than like, no one has the answer. You got to just iterate. It's okay to guess, but just be conservative with your guesses, and then you can add on over time.
So what else are you looking at when you are digging under the hood with financials? Like in this case, you were mentioning a few scenarios, with labor efficiency ratios,
Yeah.
and what else are you looking at to see where maybe there's glaring issues on the horizon?
Personal finance, major. So in this situation, I'm going very, very high level. This guy owned a house and he wanted to move. And we were trying to figure out whether he can afford to keep his house and buy another house. Keep his house and buy another house. So if he kept his house, he would rent it out and he would have a renter pay the mortgage and pay it down. And that would be part of his retirement plan, right? And then if he buys another house, he's got to come up with the cash for the down payment. So now the question is, can he afford to take the money out of the business for the down payment for that second house? And then it's a question of, for the next 6 months, how aggressive was he going to be with respect to hiring and really putting his foot on the accelerator and trying to like be huge? Or in this case, playing a little bit more safe, which I advised him, so that he could pull some of this money out and buy the house. It was a stretch, but in hindsight, he locked in great mortgage rates on both properties.
So in that situation, he kind of had to make a decision. Do I put the accelerator on the business and put the money in the business, or is this personal piece important enough for me to be conservative in the business for this amount of time and invest in something that I have a goal with?
Yeah. And the other thing is, like, I'm kind of like, I mean, you talk to 20 people on the street, you probably get 10 people one way, 10 people the other way. I believe that the business has to serve the person's life. It should not be that the entrepreneur serves the business's life. I believe the business has to fund the personal goals of people. So I was more interested on what's his personal end game than the business end game. Because like, what if he can't sell his business? What if it goes down? Whatever. Like, it's like, I believe that the business got to serve his personal. So if that's the case, I was like, okay, if you can pull this off, I think it's a smart move. Keep the house, buy another one, blah, 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 blah. It was hard, but it wasn't a straight line, but, and there's always risks with that. Again, everyone listening, I'm not saying you should do this. This is general advice. It's hypothetical in nature for you, and you need to consult your own advisor. But these are the things you need to think about. Like, okay, my business is going to fund my personal life. How am I going to set it up that way?
When you're talking to business owners, again, you're explaining a lot of stuff. What do you wish that people knew more about? Because you're explaining a lot of this stuff.
I think their relationship to money. I think, like, what did you learn from your mom about money? What did you learn from your dad about money? How is your spouse or significant other thinking about money? You guys get in fights about money? What are your own opinions about money? Like, I think there's a lot of woo-woo people that talk about, money mindset and all of that. And I think it's really important. And there's a lot of CFPs and financial advisors that don't even want to touch the psychology of money. And because they are not trained and they're just not in that. I'm in the middle. Like, I definitely talk about it, but I think that I'm not the expert. Sometimes I'll bring someone in, but I do think that people need to be more aware of their money. It's called money script, right? It's like the stories that we have about money, stuff like that.
And then on that topic of dealing with spouse and money.
Yeah.
How do you help people, or not maybe you, but how do people navigate that
Yeah.
better?
I think both spouses want to be understood by one another and need to have the perspective as to why their spouse is doing things the way that they are and why they're making decisions that way. And I think I'm going to talk to myself here. I'm talking to myself. Humility is so big in this. Like, I can't put myself above my wife. Not that I do, but I'm in the money game the whole day. Like, all I do is talk to people about money and advise on money. It's all I do. So when I do my own money stuff, it's like I need to be very chill and very humble and just like ask myself, what am I trying to accomplish? And, I do the same thing with clients. It's like they need to feel like it's safe to get a little bit more vulnerable and be okay with where they come from with respect to money.
What would be an example of that? The
Okay.
vulnerability.
Yeah. So, okay. So for entrepreneurs, let's say one spouse is running the business, is very, very in touch with the money and kind of knows and is in charge of that. The other spouse doesn't know anything about the other spouse's business. They don't know the bank account numbers. They don't know how much the business makes. Um, they don't even know how much money the business has. There's just money that goes into the joint account, and the spouse, it could be a husband or a wife, and they know, like, okay, well, he or she does that, and there's just money that comes in, and then they feel a little bit in the dark. And then when they ask questions about what's going on in the business, that spouse that's running the business sometimes is like, no, this is my baby, I really don't want to go through it with you. And then that other spouse feels shut out. And then when I come in, I'm just looking for like 2 or 3 things to tell that spouse, the non-knowing spouse, about what's going on. It could be literally, the business does $70,000 a month in sales, and it generates about $10,000 a month of cash that you guys can do whatever you want with.
Mhm.
And every
Love it.
3 months, you got to set aside 20 grand for taxes, and we're doing that. With that $10,000 a month of extra cash, what do you think we should do with it? I'm a little, I'm getting curious. I'm asking, I'm including them, making them feel like they have a voice. And it's not like I think I know what they should do with it. It's more like, okay, so how can we collectively make a decision? And then there's just this little trigger. It's like that first sip of wine that you have. It's just that little first sip of coffee, and it just brings the edge down a little bit. And now we're in the game of communication. Men are from Mars, women are from Venus. That's
Justin,
right.
I know you have to run, but I think you missed your calling as a therapist. And but I want to be the first one to thank you. I want to point people, they can check out more, learn more at cranefinancialsolutions.com or intentionmoney.com. And thanks for doing this.
Thank you so much. Great to be here.
What I got, you can't buy. It resides between my eyes. Walked through the fire, came out better on the other side. See, life's like a beach if you find the sand. And right now, I feel like 100 grand.